I'm going to dive right into it today. Welcome to the In-Between-Man podcast, where men can be men. It's true. I'm not lying to you. It's really a good place. In this episode today, I have been inspired. What's been inspiring you, Rennick? Well, just the last couple months or so, I've had an opportunity to meet Kerie Hamilton. And I don't know if you guys know who she is. You should check her out. She's got the BottomsUp Podcast, Rising from Trauma to Transformation. And you can see her stuff at BottomsUpWithKH.com. And she's a domestic violence survivor, someone that I literally reached out to on a whim, and we got connected, and we've been going back and forth ever since. And just recently we've gotten reacquainted again, and she invited me onto her podcast, and I'll put a link to the podcast on my description as well. But she's also the author of Sorry, Satan, This Soul is for the Savior. And I have a signed copy, and you don't. But I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm gonna. And she put that together in 3 days. This woman is bananas, but in the best of ways, so many different ways. So I'm also going to put a link in the description down below where if you wanted to buy her book and read it, you could do that by going to Amazon. And what's been interesting is during the podcast with her and just over the course of, collaborating together, she's been talking a lot about domestic violence. And she also has recently put up a new YouTube channel called Author, right? But at the same time, too, she's got the Bottoms Up Podcast. She just, on a whim, just opens up another YouTube channel titled Breaking Free Life After Domestic Violence. And so she's just made it upon herself to do a video every day to get the word out about domestic violence. You got to check it out. She's sincere, she's honest, she's genuine, and I'm a better person because I know her. And so, what I wanted to do today is kind of honor her. And even, for the month of October, I wouldn't have known unless she told me that, this is Domestic Violence Month, right? Bringing awareness, helping people understand what domestic violence is, helping people understand what emotional abuse is. And she's really opened my eyes up to a lot of different things that I hadn't seen before that, are worth looking at, if that makes sense from a personal standpoint. So today, I am going to share with you the following. And it's not going to be long-winded. It's not going to be crazy. But what I can tell you is 3 or 4 months after I got divorced. What I'm going to do today is, in honor of Kerie, in honor of Domestic Violence Month, awareness, I am going to spend some time. I got this document 4 months after I got divorced. And when I looked through it, I didn't think that I could identify it with any of what they were talking about, because this was domestic violence. And my scenario didn't really include that. But what I liked the most about this document, Saving Grace, which was put together, Imagine Life Without Violence, is something that, a facility or someone on the domestic hotline would provide to you to help you understand more about, your dynamic that you're living in. If you're living with an abuser, if you're living with someone who's, emotionally abusive, all those things. I really did think that this was a good document. And for me, it helped me understand my scenario much better. But what I will not do today is I will not share any of my experience with this topic, simply because now is not the right time. But it is the right time to share with you the information in this document in hopes that you can identify with it. And So this packet was created to help inform domestic violence survivors, their friends and family. For your safety, please consider keeping this information out of the hands of the abuser. A survivor of domestic violence has critical needs. They include a safe place to be, safe people to be with, and clear and accurate information to help the survivor assess her situation and decide what to do about it. Information in this packet provided by Saving Grace deals with aspects of domestic violence. It is intended to help domestic violence survivors and their friends and family understand the nature and scope of domestic violence. It also outlines strategies for gaining safety from further abuse. Information in this packet will refer to the victim as a female and the abuser as a male. We know that domestic violence occurs in same-sex relationships as well as people with who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, questioning, and or intersex like LGBTQI. While a woman may sometimes be an abuser in relationships, statistics show that 90% of domestic violence incidents are perpetrated by men against women. Right? So, like, what are some of the myths that are associated with domestic violence? Myths and facts about domestic violence. Okay? Domestic violence is not common. Every 9 seconds in the United States, a woman is battered by her husband or partner. The FBI estimates it will happen to 1 out of every 2 women in their lifetime. That's a lot of women. Domestic violence happens only in certain cultures or low economic families. Domestic violence happens in all kinds of families. Rich and poor, city and rural, in every racial, religious, and age group, and in every part of the country. A myth. All domestic violence is physical. Being abused may include physical violence, but victims may have also been abused verbally, emotionally, and or psychologically. These forms of abuse can be just as terrifying and often result in feelings of low self-esteem, depression, and loneliness from the victim. Another myth. She should just leave the relationship and the abuse will end. Fact. Fear for her safety is a major deterrent to leaving. 75% of fatalities and serious injuries occur while women are leaving the abusive relationship. In addition, many factors such as economical dependence, religious beliefs, and lack of resources, social stigma, and isolation keep a woman from leaving a violent situation. Myths. Victims provoke their partner's violence or can stop the abuse. Fact. Victims never control an abuser's actions and are never to blame for such abuse. Violence and controlling behaviors are never justified or acceptable. Myth. Children aren't aware or affected by violence in their homes. Fact. Studies show that 50 to 70% of cases where one parent is abusing the other, the children are also being abused. Children suffer emotional, cognitive, behavioral, and developmental impairments as a result of witnessing domestic violence in the home. Myth. Drugs and alcohol cause domestic violence. Abusers frequently make excuses for their violence, claiming loss of control due to alcohol or drugs. Although drug or alcohol abuse may intensify existing violent behavior, it does not cause domestic violence. Myth. Abusers need to learn how to control their anger. Fact. Anger management methods are not appropriate because they do not address the root cause of the abuse. Abuse is not about anger. It is motivated by power and control. Abusers hold attitudes and beliefs about the accepting of being violent. Women, myth, are just as violent as men. Fact, women are more likely to be victims of domestic violence than men. The majority of violent crimes in America are perpetrated by men. According to the FBI, in over 85% of all domestic violence instances, the man is the batterer. And then, last but not least, myth. It really isn't violence when same-sex couples fight. It's just a lover's quarrel, a fair fight between equals. This is based on the false assumption that two people of the same gender have no power differences. It also ignores the fact that in domestic violence relationships, it is the choice of one partner to take advantage of her or his power in abusive ways. Dismissing domestic violence as lovers' quarrel trivializes and excuses violence that is just as real and dangerous as many in heterosexual relationships. You know, part of me wants to reread it again, but I'm not. What I'm going to move on to now is how to spot an abuser. Okay? Let's find that out. Before an abuser starts physically assaulting his victim, he typically shows his abusive tendencies through red flag behaviors. There are several warning signs. Here are some common examples. Abusers can be very charming. This is excessive charm. Abused women have described their abuser when they first meet as Prince Charming or her knight in shining armor. He can be very engaging, thoughtful, considerate, and charismatic. Quick involvement. An abuser will often claim love at first sight and or that she is the only person he could ever talk to so openly who would understand him so well. He needs someone desperately and will pressure her to commit to him because she feels the relationship has reached that stage. Social isolation. Social isolation usually begins with wanting the woman to spend time with him and not her friends or support system. He then will slowly isolate her from any person who is a support to her. He dictates who she can talk to. He tells her she cannot receive phone calls from her family. Wow. Jealousy. Jealousy is a tool abusers use to control their victims. An abuser will question his victim about her daily activities and make baseless accusations. Examples may be things like consistently accusing her of having affairs. If she goes to the grocery store, he accuses her of having an affair with the grocery clerk. If she goes to the bank, he accuses her of having an affair with the bank teller. Abusers will usually say that jealousy is a sign of love. Oh my God. And then controlling behavior. Abusers are very controlled and very controlling people. In time, the batterer will control every aspect of the victim's life. How she wears her hair, what clothes she wears, whom she talks to. Batterers are very controlling people. While they appear to be into a rage or be out of control, we know they are very much in control of their behavior. So, can you identify with any of that? Excessive charm, quick involvement, social isolation, jealousy, controlling behavior. Does any of that resonate with you? I mean, honestly, does it resonate with you? Because there's some surveys in here that we're going to take and go through that will clarify whether or not you've accepted the fact that you're with someone who is an emotional abuser or have shown signs of domestic violence. Okay? This was also really interesting for me also, which is domestic violence, understanding your partner's abusive mentality. All right? Abusive men come in every personality type, arise from good childhoods and bad ones, are macho men or gentle, liberated men. No psychological test can distinguish an abusive man from a respectful one. Abuse is not a product of a man's emotion. Abusiveness is not a product of man's emotional injuries or his deficiencies in his skills. In reality, abuse springs from a man's early cultural training, his key male role models, and his peer influencers. Abuse is a problem of values, not of psychology. He is controlling. This generally falls into one or more of the following areas of relationship: arguments and decision making. He sets the rules and he enforces them with abuse if necessary. Personal freedom. It is his right to control where his partner goes, who she sees, what she wears, when she needs to be back home. Parenting. If the couple has children, the abusive man generally considers himself the expert on parenting, even if he does little of the actual work. This is one of those informative podcasts today. He feels entitled. It is his belief that he has a special status and that it provides him with excessive rights and privileges that do not apply to his partner. Rather than a normal, healthy model of relationship in which each partner has equal rights, in the abuser's mind, his rights are greatly inflated, and that the rights of his partner and children are greatly diminished. His special rights usually fall into one or more of the following categories: physical, emotional and sexual caretaking, difference, and freedom from accountability. He feels like the victim. His entitlement thinking makes him reverse aggression and self-defense. So when she stands up for herself, he will say she is the one abusing you or him. He disrespects his partner and considers himself superior to her. The abuser tends to see his partner as less intelligent, less competent, less logical, and even less sensitive than he is. Most abusers verbally attack their partner in degrading, revolting ways. They reach for words they know are most disturbing to women, such as bitch, wench, and see you next Tuesday, often preceded by the word fat. These disgusting words carry a force and ugliness that feels like violence. Indeed, abusers admit that they choose their words carefully in order to make their partner feel both debased and unsafe. He confuses love with abuse. The more a man abuses, the more he is demonstrating that he really cares only about himself. He may have a powerful feeling, but it may have more to do with what he gets from his partner than the desires to give to others. He strives to have a good public image. Most abusive men put on a charming face for their communities, creating a sharp split between their public image and their private treatment of women and children. He feels justified. Abusers externalize responsibilities for their actions, believing that their partners make them behave in abusive ways. Abusers deny and minimize their abuse. He denies his actions to close off discussion because he doesn't want to answer for what he did, and perhaps he even wants her to feel frustrated and crazy. Abusers are possessive. So, when I thought about domestic violence, I thought about physical punishment. I never considered or even really knew of the term emotional abuse. But I'm just going to take a second and read to you domestic violence, aka emotional abuse. The presence of emotional abuse is the largest risk factor and greatest predictor of domestic violence. Emotional abuse is a pattern of intimidation, coercion, and threats that an abuser uses to get the victim's compliance. As a result of the emotional abuse, a woman lives her life in fear and repeatedly alters her thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and denies her needs to avoid further abuse. Because power and control tactics take many different forms, happening during many different types of incidents and occur mostly in private, it is often difficult for the victim to pinpoint or describe his or her feelings. The indicator heard most often is, "I feel like I'm going crazy," or "Was I wrong?" A general feeling of confusion. Targeted, repeated emotional abuse can severely affect the victim's sense of self and of reality. The process is the same as the brainwashing inflicted on prisoners of war and hostages taken by terrorists. Jesus, that's a tough example. The techniques an abuser uses are meant to isolate the victim from help and to reinforce the abuser's control by humiliating the victim. The abuser is training the victim that resistance is futile. It is impossible to create a complete list of tactics that are used by abusers to control their partners. The following list represents some of the most reported forms of emotional abuse by victims who have been in an emotionally abusive relationship. So here's some examples. Quote unquote, verbal abuse. Criticizes her, tells her she is stupid, fat or ugly, or calls her names. Tells her that no one would want her or that she could not make it on her own. Make racist comments about her cultural background. Criticizes her spiritual beliefs. Plays mind games with her. Lies to her or recreated events. Refuses to talk to her for long periods of time, the silent treatment. Shame or humiliates her if she needs him to take care of physical needs relative to a disability. Denies her actions or minimizes them. Tells the woman that all the problems in the relationship are her fault. Wow. And then there's one associated with isolation. Interferes with her relationships with family, friends, and coworkers. Making accusations of infidelity if she speaks to another man or accuses her of being a lesbian if she has female friends. Interrogates her about her whereabouts and the people she talked to. Prevents her from attending her faith community. Refuses to allow her to go to work, school, or other independent activities. Does not allow her to take English classes if she's not English speaking. For a deaf woman, refuses to provide American Sign Language interpretation. Threatens to out a victim who is part of the LGBTQI community. Threatens to deport her if she does not stay in the relationship. Threatens to kill himself. Says that he couldn't make it without her. Threatens to take the children from her or ensure she never sees them again. Intimidation. Destroys or throws out things that are important to her. Slams doors, punches holes in the walls, pulls phone out of the walls, yells at her, will not allow her to speak, holds a deaf woman's hands so she cannot sign, takes her wheelchair out of reach, or damages her scooter. Here's one for sexual abuse. Insists that she has sex with him in whatever manner he wants and whenever he wants. Threatens to have affairs or accuses her of having affairs if she did not have sex with him. Withholds sex in a malicious way to punish her or make her feel bad about herself. So this is a quote from a grief therapist. Emotional abuse is underneath all other types of abuse. The most damaging aspect of physical, sexual, mental, etc. abuse is the trauma to our hearts and souls from being betrayed by the people that we love and trust. It's my mom calling. So they also have a survey, and I was going to go through the emotionally abusive isolation survey and give you my score, but I've decided that I'm not going to do that. And instead, I'm going to talk briefly about the Duluth model. So the Duluth model, the power and control wheel, which is also known as the Duluth model. Physical and sexual assaults or threats to commit them are the most apparent forms of domestic violence and are usually the actions that allow others to become aware of the problem. However, regular abuse of other abusive behaviors by the abuser, when reinforced by one or more acts of physical violence, makes up a larger system of abuse. Although physical assaults may occur only once or occasionally, they instill threat of future violent attacks and allow the abuser to take control of the woman's life and circumstances. The power and control diagram is a particularly helpful tool in understanding the overall pattern of abusive and violent behaviors, which are used by the abuser to establish and maintain control over his partner. Very often, one or more violent incidents are accompanied by an array of these other types of abuse. They are less easily identified, yet firmly establish a pattern of intimidation and control in the relationship. And so I'm not gonna present this actual power and control model to you. What I'll do is, in the description, I'll just give you this whole thing. You can have all of it. There's questions in there that you can fill out. There's more details. I mean, it has a outline. What's emotional abuse, self-assessments, the power of a control wheel, the equality wheel, effects of domestic violence on the children, what may happen if you leave, planning for safety, temporary restraining orders, preparing for court, crime victims compensation, stalking, protective orders, moving beyond effects of domestic violence and the process of healing, healthy relationships, how to love yourself, I will emerge. Like, those should probably be areas that we focus on a little bit more. But I think the reality is that if you can identify with any of what I just been talking about for the last 30 minutes, then yeah, like, that's something that you shouldn't sweep under the rug, and you should call the hotline. I don't have the toll-free hotline here in front of me, but I have the Saving Grace phone number, which are the people who have put this document together, and I'll say it out loud. It's 541-389-7021. If you live in the state of Oregon, it's 866-504-8992. And I'll say that again. the Saving Grace facility or association that has put this pamphlet together has a hotline, and it's 541-389-7021. And if you happen to live in the state of Oregon, the toll-free number is 866-504-8992. And so, I kind of have a bleeding heart for, women who are in situations like this. I mean, it's absolutely gut-wrenching. To be honest with you, I don't really know how bad it actually is. I've never been in that situation where I feel like I'm physically going to be threatened, but I can only imagine the terror that must instill in a woman who can't protect herself or has an abuser who's much stronger than she is. And it's just I had to do something because part of Kerie's story is riddled with topics and actual experience about these things that we're talking about. And I encourage you to go check out her website. It's a BottomsUp Podcast at bottomsupwithkh.com. That's the website. She has links to her daily YouTube channel there, Breaking Free of Domestic Violence. And she's also a spiritual coach, and is helping, women, navigate really serious dynamics like this. She's an advocate. You know what I mean? So if you don't really know and you have questions, I would highly recommend reaching out to her because she's going to know a lot more than I would. And she's got, I see that she has come through the other side, right? Like I see that she has pushed through this dynamic, and it's freed her, and yeah, those situations take time to unravel and whatnot, but she's a positive example of one person working through this scenario on her own, and if you feel alone, you got the phone number. Kerie's email address is iamwithkh@yahoo.com. Feel free to reach out to her. I know she'd love to hear from you, and start asking questions. And if you're scared, be scared. And if you don't know what to do, say you don't know what to do. You got to start somewhere. So I'm sending all my prayers of love and support to all the females out there that are going through any of this terrible scenarios of domestic violence. Also, a hat off to the men too. There are scenarios where, this is turned around, but it seems to be more common in more of an emotionally abusive way, where there's less physical domestic violence and more of just the degrading and, put downs and all of those things wrapped up into one. And, I never thought that I could ever be emotionally abused, but I did. And I think most men don't think that they're capable of being confronted with this type of abuse. And boy, was that a rude awakening. So do me a favor, do yourself a favor. This is a Yeti cooler mug. I got ice in it and water, and that's it, gang. That's all I got for you. And you know what? I'll see you on the next one.